So let's begin this webinar. First of all, let me thank, on behalf of the Career Development Committee of Pan-African Research Council, also for the Global Council, to thank the FID team to be here today, for accepting our invitation for this webinar. Okay, so thank you all for joining us. Let me just give you a few words on how this webinar will on. So you will not be seen on video during this event. You are also automatically muted. As you see, there will be a QA portion at the end of the talk. You are invited to submit your question by clicking on the QA button on your Zoom screen. So welcome today to this webinar. We will begin very shortly after some words from Leonard and also from our colleague, namely Juliette and her colleagues. So Leonard, could you
start? All right, so yeah, thanks Sophie for the introduction. So today we'll be running our first fundraising webinar, and we are very lucky to have Juliette Seban, the executive director of the Fonds d'innovation pour le développement, an initiative by the French government to promote innovation around the world, particularly in Africa. So let me just say a few words about the Pan-African Research Council. It was set up a year ago, and the goal is to set up a platform for African scientists to develop their research in a collaborative manner, in a way that truly multidisciplinary, and to basically, put together Africans from different corners: Europe, US, East, West, Central, and Southern Africa. And following the initiative, we set up the different foundational institutions. We set up a journal called Wendo that is working hard for the first issue. We have a research committee that will be organizing conferences and promote collaborative research, and also develop funding opportunities for African scholars. And then we also have a career development committee, which organizing this event. The goal is to help to promote young people, not only professionally, but also academically, and by allowing the older generation to inspire and to mentor the younger generation. But since one of the key aspects of career development is actually research funding, there will be several events like this, where we expose and present funding opportunities, to our members and those who want to join us. We also have a public engagement committee, that public and policy engagement committee that will work with government, international organizations, and so on. So far we have in the upper 500 members, from social science, mathematics, computer science, environmental science, agriculture, and also biomedical. And I think we have great representation across continents and across countries. And so we are up and running. And I think this event is a testament to how far we have gone since last year when this was set up. And we are extremely, extremely ambitious. And so for those who are not part of the council, please consider joining it. For those who are in, try to be very active in the different committees and subcommittees that we have, so that we can really, really, advance science, innovation, and promote development in Africa in general. So thank you very much. And again, I would like to thank, the Fond d'Innovation pour le Développement, in particular Juliette, and my colleagues from the fund for this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leonard. Then we are going to move to the next step, the presentation of FID. So let me introduce the colleague from FID, Funds Dupas. So the executive director, Juliette Seban, will talk about this fund during 25 minutes. We have also the pleasure of having the president of FID Review Committee, Pascaline Dupas, and also the FID investment officer, Joanna Tivalskowski, Claire Bernard, who is the FID deputy director, and Patrice Léger, also FID investment officer. So Juliette, please take the floor.
Thanks, Sophie, and thank you very much, Leonard, for the introduction. We are really glad to be able to present FID to the council today. If I understood well, your first webinar. So I'm, as you said, Sophie, Pascaline is here to also intervene in the Q&A if needed. So she's the president of our review committee, and 3 members of the team. So Claire, Patrice, and Joanna are also with us today. So I'll present a few slides, and then the goal of this talk is really to keep some time for your questions. So feel free to ask any question during the talk, and we will also have time to discuss after the presentation. So let me share my slide and hope it will work. I think it does. Great. So Fund for Innovation in Development. So why an innovation fund? So the goal of the FID is to test, accelerate, and scale innovation. The mandate of FID is to reduce poverty and inequality. So it's innovations that are linked to the reduction of poverty and inequality, drawing on the rigor of scientific evaluation in order to transform public policy. So of course, I'll say more about all of those concepts, but that's really the mandate of FID. So the fund, to give you a little bit of context, the Fund for Innovation in Development was launched mid-December. It's an initiative from the French government, aligned with a recommendation from Deputy Hervé Berville, who gave a report on how to modernize French aid. And so FID is an independent grant-making body. It's hosted by the French Development Agency, so AFD, but it's governed by a board of directors chaired by Esther Duflo, and in which Leonard is part of this board, and that's why we're also here today, and Stefania Sancheva as the third researcher. In terms of mandate, so the FID is a new and ambitious funding mechanism. The goal is to look for high potential solutions from innovators and researchers around the world, to rely on rigorous evidence of impact, and to scale up, so accelerate the deployment of impactful solutions. So the mandate of FID is the fight against poverty and inequality. So all innovations that we will look at are within this perimeter, and to innovate to transform public policy. There is a very close link with research in the way FID is designed. So as we already mentioned, we have the impact at the heart of FID mandate. So one thing is we want to fund innovations that can rigorously be validated, that their impact can rigorously be validated. So on FID side, we involve a lot of researchers in the review process, and I will tell you a bit more about this. And also on the applicant side, you can apply for funding to FID to fund some research and impact evaluation. We are 100% grant funding, and we have different stages that I will show you that go between 50,000 to 4 million euro, depending on the level of maturity of the innovation. And the different level of funding that we have are at key stages in the development of innovative solutions. To tell you a bit about the type of project that we would fund. So in terms of sectors, we are open to innovations that tackle challenges related to poverty and inequality in any sector. There are priority sectors that are the one of the French development agencies that are education, health, climate change, and gender equality, but they're non-exclusive. So you can apply for funding for an innovation in any sectors that is not mentioned here. In terms of geography, FID is open to application for activities in any low and middle income country. We explicitly encourage application for activities in the 90 priority country for French aid, which a lot of them are in Africa. So we can give you the list in the chat. And in terms of institutions, FID accept application from nearly any type of applicant working independently or in partnership with others. And we do accept application from research institutions, so of course, including universities, governments, social enterprise, non-profit, social and commercial enterprise. The only institutions that are excluded from FID funding are institutions that are part of the UN system, or international development banks, or individuals by themselves. Maybe I should have started there, but you can see on the right, our definition of innovation is very broad. So what we mean is any solution that can actually improve the current state. So any solution with strong potential to achieve development impact at scale in less costly, faster, or more feasible ways than existing approaches. So any solution that would improve the current situation compared to alternatives. So it's a very broad definition of innovation. So we have 5 different stages of funding. It's not a ladder, so you don't have to apply to stage 0 and then move up to the different stages. You can apply for a project at any stage that is on this slide. So we have the stage. If you're familiar with innovation funds, stage 1, 2, and 3 are pretty standards. So the first one is pilot, and I'll come back to 0 and TPP, but so stage 1 finance pilot of innovation. So innovations that are early in development and need real world testing to refine the basic model. So standard pilot grants. Stage 2 is to finance what we call test and position for scale. So that's where we would fund some research to actually testing an innovation that has already been piloted, but we need to assess the impact of and viability at a larger scale of an innovation, of an intervention, of a program. So at stage 2, we test and position for scale. So that's where we would fund an impact evaluation, and so researchers. And then stage 3, transition to scale. So for innovations that have already been rigorously tested and validated, we can fund the first step of the scale up to 4 million euros. So on the right, you see the amount that gives you also the a sense of, for each stages, what amount do we fund. So for stage 1, up to 200,000, for stage 2, up to 1.5 million, stage 3, up to 4 million. And then there's 2 types of grants that are a bit more the signature of FID, so that are less common in innovation funds. So the first one is stage 0, what we call prepare grants. And the goal of these prepare grants is to help applicants who are not ready to apply for pilot grants so far, but need some help to refine their solution, to maybe do a feasibility study, a market assessment, a training. We need some funds up to 50K to actually be ready for a stage 1 or stage 2 grants later. So that's the prepare grant, and we really try to focus these prepare grants on for the 19 priority countries that are mentioned. And the last one is TPP. So it's not really the last one in terms of amount, but it's a specific grant on transforming public policy. So I don't know if some of you in the room, what I understood is that you're mostly researchers, but maybe there are also some of you that are working closely with governments or with local authorities. And so these grants are more for the public sector. And the goal is to help, let's say, a government or within a ministry to institutionalize specific innovation. So it would be linked to a specific project and where there is need for embedded expertise or capacity building to scale up a specific innovation that have been rigorously tested. Or the second example of transforming public policy grants can be building the capacity of governments to design, test, and deploy rigorously evaluated innovation. So, for example, if there was a government or a ministry that would want to set up an innovation lab or think about how to institutionalize some evaluation within the governments, that's the type of grants that the type of activities that this transforming public policy grants could fund. So I went quickly, but we can of course come back to these different stages if you have questions. I'll just, before ending, show you the review process of FID to give you a sense of how you should apply if you want to apply. So we have a call for projects that is open throughout the year. So it's open mid-March and it's open now. So you can apply directly on FID's website and I'll give you the link after. You apply through the platform. It's a pretty short and simple form that you can fill, and then we check if you're eligible, and I showed you the criteria just before. Then there's a review by a FID team on the criteria that I just that I will mention in a minute. Sorry, so impact, cost effectiveness, and scale. I didn't discuss them yet, but I'll discuss them right after. There's a review on those criteria, and if you pass this first selection, and I would say, to give you a sense, that around 5 to 10% of applications received so far passed from the review by the team to the collaborative review phase. And in the collaborative review phase, we ask the team for more information. We ask researchers for their expertise on the project, so external opinion. And then the project go to the review committee that is chaired by Pascaline, who is with us today. And for projects that are above 1.5 million, they also go to the review by the board. So far, we received more than 400 applications. A lot of them, I think almost 90% of them came from, were located in Africa, and 75 were actually submitted by African organizations. But a lot of them were actually from Anglophone Africa and for Anglophone countries. And so one issue we discussed with Leonard was also how to encourage applications from to diversify the pool of teams and countries that were applying to FID funding. So I think 65% of applications we received were in English and 35 in French, to give you a sense. What we try to do in this process is to have a review. When you apply through the platform, you hear from us after around 2 months. We tell you if you go to the collaborative review phase or if you didn't pass the first selection process, and we try to give you some constructive feedback to improve your or to help you understand the decision and maybe improve your project. So I didn't talk about this. Sorry, that up. Let me see if that works better. Yes. So projects are evaluated on the basis of 3 criteria, and I will stop with this slide, so maybe it can help with the discussion, because I guess you might have some questions around those criteria. So the standards for each criteria are of course calibrated to each stage of funding. So the first criteria that I already mentioned is the rigorous evidence of impact and in improving the lives of people living in poverty, or a clear strategy for generating it. So for early stages, when we say preparation grant or stage 1, we don't expect an impact evaluation. What we expect is a strong theory of change. So a clear understanding of what are the mechanisms that you expect that will actually lead to the impact you aim for your innovation to have. So a strong theory of change and a clear monitoring and evaluation strategy to actually assess whether your pilot is have some clear indicators on for looking at your the pilot implementation. And for later stages, so for stage 2 and stage 3, stage 2, what we're looking at is for an evaluation showing evidence of causal impact. And when we talk about impact evaluation, here we mean quantitative research method as experimental or quasi-experimental method with a comparison group, or a plan to do an evaluation. So that would be for stage 2. And for stage 3, the evaluation needs to have happened already, and we are at a scale-up phase. The second criteria is cost effectiveness of the innovation. And so what we mean by cost effectiveness is we look at the ability of the project or of the development innovation to demonstrate more impact per euro than the status quo or alternatives. So we don't look at the cheapest program. What we look at is solutions that can prove they are either faster or cheaper or more impactful than their alternatives. And so more cost effectiveness. And so to improve the cost effectiveness of an innovation, either you increase the impact or you reduce the cost. And so that's the ratio we want to look at. And again, of course, depending on the level of maturity of your innovation, we know that at very early stage, you might not have a very clear idea of the cost effectiveness of the innovation because you've never measured the impact. But at least we ask you to have a sense of what's the cost per individual, or what's the cost at scale that you envision, or so discuss this aspect of cost effectiveness in your application. And the more mature your innovation and the more at later stages, we expect to have a better sense of cost effectiveness compared to alternatives. And the last criteria that we are looking at is potential for scale, widespread adoption, and sustainability. And so the FID team and the review committee look at innovation to be rapidly or efficiently replicated and deployed to reach a very large number of beneficiaries. So we don't define what we mean by very large number. But what's important for us is that you can show in your application what at scale the program could look like. In terms of number of people reached, type of funding that would be required, and so to discuss this aspect in your application. I give here the contact address if you had any question after this presentation, but of course the goal is to actually discuss with you now that we are all here with the team. If you do have questions, that's the website to apply, where there are also some other resources like the call for proposal or frequently asked questions that you can find and that hopefully can help you in your application. But maybe I'll go back to this slide before I stop, and I can let I don't know, Sophie, if there are questions, or if Pascaline, you want to jump in with maybe your explanation of this criteria, or what do you expect in the review committee regarding these stages and criteria?
So we had 3 questions, only 2 questions for FID, but I think that Pascaline already answered to some of them, or no? So Pascaline, Juliette, would you like to, let's say, talk about more this question, or move to Pascaline?
I did not answer any of the questions. I just saw some of them have been assigned to be answered. I don't know, maybe it was Pete that, but there were essentially 2 questions related to eligibility, who can apply. So Juliette, if you want to address that. One is whether FID accept proposals from CGIAR research centers, and the other one is about doctoral and postdoctoral fellows at universities. And I think the answer is that anybody can apply, but I'll let you clarify that, Juliette.
Yeah, no, that's the answer. So anybody can apply wherever the organization is located, and whether you are a doctoral, postdoctoral, or researcher, you can apply to FID funding. What we want is wherever the location is, that the activities are happening, the activities we fund are happening in a developing country, and we're looking at the 3 criteria that I just mentioned.
Yeah. We also have a question from Caroline. I think that is this funding also applicable to doctoral, postdoctoral fellows at university?
Yes. So yes. Wherever your status within the university, you can apply.
I mean, just there's a technical aspect to this, which is that when you apply, you cannot apply as an individual, because FID is not going to transfer money to a personal bank account, obviously. So when you apply as a university person, you have to apply through your university, and some universities may not allow doctoral students and postdoc to be PIs, to have PI status. So you have to talk with your university to know, how can I apply? Okay, and maybe the university route is not the best. Maybe you're better off applying in partnership with the field partner. Let's say you're going to do a study with an organization, an NGO, or a government. It may be easier for them to apply with you mentioned as a researcher, part of the team, than for you as a postdoctoral fellow or the student to apply in your name. Okay, so this little technical aspect of who applies really depends on the rules at your university. In my own university, Stanford, I know that students don't have PI status. So typically they'll apply through an organization that they work with.
Okay.
And there are a lot of questions around deadlines.
Yes.
So there's no deadline, it's an open window. So I know it can be a bit disturbing, and that's the way we function for now. But basically, there's the call for proposal is online, and you can apply at any time. And we review the application on a rolling basis, and have review committee as needed, depending on the number of good applications that need to be reviewed. So there's no specific call for projects on specific topics or on specific stages. It's open all the time for every stages. I know, Pascaline, on the causal impact, do you want to take this one? I don't know if you saw that question. For stage 2, you said evidence of causal impact.
Yes.
Okay, so first, before we get to that, I just wanted to add one thing to but I lost my, oh yeah, so there's no, so it's a rolling application, so there's no deadline to apply. Now you may be interested in knowing how long it takes to hear back, okay, because there's no deadline, it's rolling. And so far I have to say Juliette and her team have been doing a very impressive job and gotten back to applicants quite fast. I don't know if it's possible to sustain that, but so I think the aim is what, like 3 months? 4 months?
Yeah, the aim is to actually give you a first answer after 2 months of your application. So to tell you whether you go to the review, collaborative review phase, or whether you didn't pass the first selection. And then the full project cycle before we sign a convention and you get the funds, we expect this to be around 6 months, but this still needs to be tested for the first selected projects.
And I guess Joanna wanted to clarify some of that with everybody.
Sorry, I missed. Is there a question we didn't answer?
I think that we have a problem to hear. Really.
To hear me?
No.
Or Pascaline?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we had trouble hearing you.
Yeah. So, sorry, I was saying, Joanna wanted to clarify something about eligibility. I think it may make sense for Joanna to unmute herself and share that information.
Hello, yes, thank you, Pascaline. Hi, everyone. It was just about the eligibility criteria. Indeed, the individual cannot apply by themselves, but also there is an issue with multilateral donors and the financial institutions that are not eligible either. So if FID could totally fund in partnership with other donors, so it could be a co-funding with other donors. But if your organization is structured as a partnership within the governance of the project, international donors,
I think we hear you very bad, Joanna. I don't know if you can get closer to your mic or.
Yes, I'm just literally online. But I don't know if you can have the main messages of my answer.
Yeah, I think we got it. So what you said is that individuals are not eligible, but also multilateral organizations or organizations that receive multilateral fundings, like international development banks or UN system, are not eligible. So you had a question about CGIAR, who receive also a lot of multilateral funding. So is that eligible or not? But maybe we can, I mean, if you have specific questions, then feel free to contact us on the contact address. I think we can take these questions later. I see. So Pascaline, do you want to take the one on impact?
Let me. Yes, hoping you can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there was a question. Okay, so the question was for stages 2 and above, what qualifies as causal evidence of causal impact, and does an RCT study qualify? The answer is yes. Well done RCT study absolutely qualify if it shows impact. It doesn't mean that it's the only way to show impacts. Okay, so some non-RCT evidence can be qualifying as well, as long as it's convincing and rigorous. So on the review committee, we are all very well versed in reading impact studies and impact evaluations in assessing whether we get convinced by them or not. So you have to cite studies, and then we are going to read them. Okay, so we're going to read them and see whether we think that it was well done. So there can be an RCT that was badly done, and then it won't qualify. There can be a non-RCT that is very convincing if you use another identification, like regression discontinuity or IV, that makes sense, and then we may be convinced by that. So it's really, think of, if you wanted to get the paper study published in a journal, it has to be convincing enough. It's going to be the same standard for us to think that the evidence is strong enough. There's also a question about the fields, whether there's any specific fields of interest or that we prefer, and fields of science or fields of topics. So I have to say, from what I've seen so far, it's very, very open. We've seen projects in agriculture, in health, and governance. Everything really is acceptable. Is it also your understanding, Juliette?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mentioned the priority sectors, which are health, education, climate change, and gender equality. But we do look at every application regarding their sector. So we are open to any sector and field of study. Is there, Leonard, you ask, is there a limitation about the duration of a project and the budget? So the budget is depending on the stages.
Sorry. So what happened is that I shared my link with a lot of people,
Oh, so it's not you.
There are about 20 letters. There is only one, actually. So sorry for the confusion. So the question is somebody that
A friend of Leonard is asking.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So someone named Leonard asked a question about duration and budget. So in terms of budgets, that's the stages I presented. So depending on whether you apply for prepare grants, a pilot, a scale up, you have different amounts that are the maximum that you can apply for. And so it goes from 50K maximum for prep grants to 4 million maximum for scale up grants. And in terms of duration, we don't have a strong criteria. I think what's important is that you justify within the explanation of the project why this duration is necessary. But we didn't put a maximum or recommended or minimum duration for each project.
And then some people are interested in knowing the funding rate or the share of proposals that were successful. I think it's a bit early for us to answer that question because we haven't had much time to go over. A lot of the 400 proposals submitted so far have been submitted so recently that we have not yet made decisions. And I think if we give you the success rate for the first batch, let's say of 100, I'm worried that it's not going to be informative because it was the very beginning and we got all sorts of applications and depending on how people had heard about it or not, it was I think not a very representative set of applications. So I'm afraid that if we give you a number, it's gonna be misleading. But I don't know, Juliette, if you want to venture a number in any case.
No, I think you're right. I think in terms of, we received a lot of applications in the first few weeks, and I think maybe the quality was lower than what we will receive in the next few weeks, months, maybe from you. So it will be misleading. What's important, I guess, in the review process is that we try to make it as short and simple as possible in the first application to reduce barriers. So it should not take you a lot of time to actually fill out the application. What I just recommend is to really read the call for proposal document before to be clear on what are the criteria for each stages that we are looking for. And then in terms of, in the end, how many projects will actually be funded, I think we will be able to give you this information a bit later on in the process.
And also there is a very good suggestion from Hagos Medin saying, is it possible to get samples of successful projects on the website? And I think that's definitely the plan. Once, I think the very first projects are still going through due diligence, so there is not yet anything that can be put on the website, but that's definitely the plan. So as more time passes and we are all learning in this process, there will be more information on the website for you to get some idea of what's being funded. We're also, learning what confuses people. So the criteria and the website is going to become clearer and clearer. The first batch of project, there were a lot of things that were just, oh, this is what I'm doing, give me money, kind of like the same way you would go to a bank and ask for, money to be able to, start your bakery and things like that. Obviously, these are not things that fit within our criteria. So we're going to be clear and clear on the website so that, we get a higher match rate between what we're looking for and what people apply for. Mm-hmm. So stay tuned and keep checking the website for more information as we also learn what helps applicants.
There is a question on, I think maybe Joanna, you already respond to it, I don't know, on the, do we accept application for very established PI, or you can be a new researcher? So we treat every application equally. I think what's important is that you convince us that what you propose is actually, a strong idea and a strong proposal. If there is a research component, that we will actually be able to answer the questions that you ask, etc. So we do treat whether you're a young researcher or an old researcher equally. There is a question on individuals cannot apply except through organizations. So that's correct. You can't apply as an individual. You need to be part of an organization, and so and you can have multiple organizations, but there's always a lead organization that would be the one that AFD. So we don't have a legal we're not how do you say that? Where FID is part of AFD in terms of convention. So there would be a contract between AFD and the lead organization, but then there can be multiple partners within the project that can receive part of the fund. It's just that we need one lead organization to lead the proposal and be the contracting institution. What's important is that there's no criteria on the localization of this organization. So I saw the question on EU, do you need an EU partner? Or so no, it can be a university in Togo that is applying by yourself, or with an NGO, or with the government of Togo, or with you don't need to have a partnership with another university in Europe or elsewhere to be eligible for FID funding. I don't know if there's other questions that we missed.
There's a question about biodiversity conservation, and yes, I think we've received already some proposals on this. And again, you have the 3 criteria, and that's what we consider, and not the topic.
Yeah. And there was a question on the rate of acceptance. So this we already said that it doesn't make much sense to actually give you a rate now, because it's just the start. So we had our first review committee mid-June. We'll have another one at the end of the summer, and it's really for the first batch of projects that we received from mid-March. And so let's wait to see how the quality stabilize or improve, or to actually communicate on share of success. Is there a minimum size?
And someone mentioned they were a bit confused trying to fill the form. So if you do get confused about filling the form, feel free to reach out to the contact folks on the website, and then we'll help you as much as we can.
Yeah, I showed you at the end of the PowerPoint, but I think Yashna will also share with you the link to our website, and also to the contact email address where you can ask questions. Maybe one thing important is that we don't discuss project before submission. I mean, we won't get into the details of your project to tell you if it seems to be a good idea, or if we would do it differently, or because in the interest of fairness, and also because we don't have time, we're a small team, and it won't be possible to discuss with every potential applicants. But we can answer, of course, all of your questions around stages, perimeters, selection criteria. So feel free to send us questions on this. And do remember that once you pass the first selection filter, then there is a review phase that is collaborative, where we can discuss if we have more questions around your project, where we can actually ask you those questions. A lot of people using Leonard name. I haven't heard any answer on the field of science that you prefer. So I don't know what you mean by field of science. Do you mean in terms of the innovation, in which sector does the innovation fall? We are open to any sector. Do you mean if you're a researcher in biology, or if you're maybe that's your question? I don't know if you can tell us a bit more about your questions. That would help. We have answered. Okay, great. Sophie or Leonard, you see any question we have an answer, or you?
No, I think you answered all the questions, but I think maybe okay. Sophie, you want to say something?
No, I said that she already answered the question.
Okay, so I think so I like just to take the opportunity, first of all. I mean, it's not the end, but really to thank Julia and Pascaline and Joanna for addressing the questions. So for the audience, I think please think about a project you have been working on for a while and you plan to work on. That's one. Think of colleagues that you can collaborate with, and we can help you find collaborators within the council or outside the council. And then third, every submission, even if it doesn't end up being funded, it's a great investment, you know, because you get feedback, you improve, and then you clearly have other opportunities, you know, to submit to other places. And I think it's also possible within the FID to resubmit, you know. So yes. Yeah, so I think I really would like to encourage everyone to take this opportunity very, very, very seriously, because you know, there are similar opportunities elsewhere, and even if it doesn't work out, and if it's a good project, I think it's, you know, more than less likely to work. So yeah, anyway, so that I wanted to say, and then insist on the fact that we can, at the council, we can help. You know, we can help identify potential collaborators. You know, maybe at some point we might have a process through which you can pre-submit a proposal for some of us to look at and give you advice and give you some feedback before you actually submit it, after all, because it's fantastic for the council if projects submitted by our members get funded, you know. So we are all in together, so we are more than happy to help. Anyway, so those are a couple of things that I would like to you know, to stress for the general audience.
Thank you, Leonard. I have a short question for Juliette. You said that you receive less application from the African French side, right? How do you explain this? I don't know. The advertisement, I don't know if he reached this French African part, or how can we, for example, the council help a little bit to disseminate the information on the French side, or perhaps the French countries researcher, they, I don't know, the networking was not so important compared to the English part, and I don't know.
So is it actually true, Juliette, that there were fewer applications from Francophone Africa than?
Yeah, we receive, I think we receive like 65% of our application in English, or even almost 70 and 30 in French.
Yeah, but some of the application, I mean, the language of the application does not necessarily reflect the country, you know.
Yeah. So we had a lot of application. So I think I should have shown maybe the countries where the application mostly came from. So the first one is République démocratique of Congo. So we received a lot from RDC. But then the next one are Nigeria, Rwanda, Uganda, and then the like Senegal and Mali, they come way below. So I mean, I didn't count exactly, but I think we received around like 35-40% in the priority countries that are mostly Francophone Africa. So in any case, I think there's room for you know, more application in those countries, and particularly with researchers from those countries involved in the research team. In the research teams that we receive. I don't, in terms of explanation why we receive more application for one country or another, I think it really depends in which networks the information about FID was disseminated. And also, I guess in many countries, they are really, and that's a guess, I mean, I don't have the information, but they are really used to innovation funds. And so I guess like in Nigeria, in Rwanda, we received tons of applications right away when we opened the call for proposal, where it felt that they had a lot ready to go for innovation funds, which maybe is less the case in other countries. So that's also the goal of the Prepare grant. It's to help, you know, maybe in organizations that are less used to these innovation funds, or how do we apply with this type of criteria to help get stronger proposal. And Leonard, what you mentioned about having the council help could also be a good way of getting more application from those countries.
Yeah. So I know that there are research centers or research networks in like Benin and Cote d'Ivoire, part of the African Center of Excellence. And so we already have, they are working on a number of projects already, funded by MasterCard Foundation or other kind of funding sources. So I'm pretty sure that researchers from these existing networks also qualify, right? It's not because you already have funding, for instance, from like the MasterCard Foundation, that if there is an extension of your project or a new project that you want to bring in the existing one, that, you can actually use this opportunity, right, to expand and even to prolong, the current project you are working on. Because, I mean, for instance, some project might be 2 years, and then you want to keep it going for another 2-3 years, that could be an opportunity. So people who already funded part of a solid, well-known networks, in fact, they will benefit, for instance, from also approaching and applying for this, right? Am I right by thinking along those lines?
Yes, definitely. So you can have funding from another funder, and then it can be an extension of your project. Or I think what really just needs to be thought through is the criteria and what do we expect at each stages. Really look at this. But if your project has already been funded somewhere else and it's a new geography that you want to study, that's totally feasible to apply to fit for this.
Yeah.
I saw that someone mentioned the language barrier. I just want to say we are doing this webinar in English, but actually all of the documents around FID, the call for proposals, the brochure, the questions are also available in French on the website. So please feel free to go, look at this. We did this because, English is a universal language, but I'm totally aware that there can be a language barrier in terms of those concepts and the application. So application can be filled in English or in French, and all documents with explanation are also available in French.
Yeah, but language also could be a criteria for collaboration, right? I mean, for instance, you are working, you are based in Cameroon, you have a project in mind, and, so you might think of a colleague who is teaching in the US or in Europe, or even somebody from an Anglophone country, so that as a team, you don't have language barrier, So I think the idea of of encouraging, organization and teams, I think it's a wonderful, it's great, because people will be forced to actually think of others who have complementary skills that they can work with, to have for this for the application of their submission to be successful. Yeah.
So we haven't. Okay. We have two other questions on the chat. Juliette, right?
Yes, I can look at those. I think we have 4 minutes left, but then,
yes.
If you miss, so one is reintroducing the panelists, maybe it's a bit too late for this one.
Yeah, it's a bit too late. I think that with the video, the recording, you may have.
But in terms of M&E and so, do we expect professional researchers to do the M&E? No. So I think M&E can be done by organizations that know how to do M&E. In terms of impact evaluation, it's pretty technical depending on what type of methodology you want to use. So we expect you to work with people who know how to do impact evaluation. So whether it's, maybe I'll let Pascaline jump in on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what's important is to think about the integrity of the impact evaluation. And so having a third party do the impact evaluation is always, better in the sense that, a given NGO doing an impact evaluation of their own work, they have an incentive to find that what they are doing works well. You know, they have to convince donors, they have to. So it's always a bit tricky if, you know, you evaluate your own. Like if I were the one writing my teaching evaluations, I would be a fantastic teacher. Okay, so that's, you know, that we do prefer if we feel like there is an independent organization doing the impact evaluation, and so that's like think of a professional research organization or survey firm, or like an independent party. That does help a lot in us getting confidence that there is a genuine interest in generating evidence that will then be also useful for others at scale.
Thank you, Pascaline. So we have less than 2 minutes left. So Juliette, Pascaline, would you like to add something, or Leonard, before we end?
Maybe Juliette will start.
Yeah.
I mean, we're looking forward to your great projects. I think that's what I would say.
And thank you for giving us a chance to share what we are hoping to accomplish with FID.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm extremely excited about the opportunity, and I'm sure everybody here is. So just to reiterate what I have been saying all along, is that the way we develop good projects or better projects is through collaboration, smart collaboration, you know. And at the council, we have colleagues who are based in the US, some are based on the continent, some are have strong technical skills, some have great insight on the topic that being covered. So it's so obvious that if we find a way to collaborate effectively, we can only come up with very good projects. And the more good project we have, you know, the better it is for everyone, you know. And then, as Julia have said, there is no kind of, there is no limit, right? I mean, it's not like you can only fund 10% of a project, right? I mean, if your projects are all great, so I'm pretty sure that there will be a way, you know. So anyway, so thanks everyone for coming. And it was the first big event from the council. And I think everybody will agree that it was a very, very successful one. Thanks to Yashna for organizing this, to Sophie leading the discussion, and Pascaline and Julia and the whole FID team. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Leonard.
Bye.
Thank you again for the FID team, and thank you everybody for coming.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Yashna. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.